from all terror and fear. Sunlight has passed and twilight has...
Matthew, how can you defend what Jackson has done?
There are two sides to this issue.
There is only one side in Charleston.
Oh, Charleston. All you ever talk about or think about is Charleston. Louisa, we haven't seen each other in over a year. Not since your husband's funeral. So let's not argue.
I am not afraid to speak my mind. President Jackson is wrong.
President Jackson is right about enforcing the tariffs.
He is threatening to hang people.
All the more reason Harry should stay here with us. I only want what's best for him.
Harry?
Harry, I thought you'd never get away. Is my father still going on about the tariffs?
Neither he or my mother will give an inch. Abby, I'm not sure what I should do.
You should stay in college. You're happy there.
My mother is too proud to admit it. But the way that things are going on the plantation, she's making a real sacrifice to keep me in school. She needs me at home.
She blames the protective tariff for all your problems.
With good reason.
Let us not quarrel, too. I remember the first day you came here last summer. My father used to tell me about my first cousin who lived on a southern plantation. It seemed like you were coming from another world.
And the North was like another world to me. When Mother arranged for me to come north for college, I felt I was beginning a wonderful adventure. Although, from the way my friends talked about the North, I expected you all to be very uncivilized.
I like that.
Well, you were very different from the young ladies I knew in Charleston.
You thought I was too bold, but then you got used to me.
So I did. Taxes and tariffs were the farthest thing from my mind that day.
Who could guess something like tariffs would drive our families so far apart?
My dear, you did an excellent job of seeing to supper this evening, as usual. Your mother would have been proud.
Thank you, Father.
A delicious supper, Miss Abigail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, if you'll excuse us.
Aren't we going to have coffee in the parlor?
Well, I thought your father and I could continue our conversation and not inconvenience you.
Oh, it's no inconvenience. We'll have coffee in here.
Since her mother passed on, I perhaps have indulged the child more than I should have. But she keeps me company.
She is a credit to the fair flower of northern womanhood.
What you really think is that by southern standards I'm hardly a lady. We'll have coffee in the dining room, Jane.
Harry, give me news of your mother.
Mother is well, sir. Although our plantation is suffering the ill effects of the tariff, same as the rest of the South.
Ill effects?
Please understand, Uncle. We in the South are not opposed to the revenue tariffs. They are small and needed to run our government. It's these new protective tariffs that are the problem. Pardon me, Miss Abigail. I have never discussed politics in front of a lady before. You see, a protective tariff places a very high tax on some imported goods so that people won't buy them but will buy American products instead. So
these tariffs protect our American industries from foreign competition, allowing them a chance to grow. I can explain it to you, cousin.
I warned you, Harry. She speaks her mind.
Here is a woolen shawl from America, and here is an old one of Mother's from England. I paid $2 for the American shawl. Now, before the protective tariff, the cost of the English shawl was $1, half the cost of the American shawl. But now, with the protective tariff, the English shawl would cost $3. So which do I buy? The American shawl.
you are saying that the protective tariffs are both a blessing and a burden for the Northerners. And that may be true. But for the Southerners, they are only a burden. They have raised the prices on many of the important things we buy, like woolen clothes. The protective tariffs are ruining our Southern farmers.
Harry, you have to put this in perspective. I own a textile mill. I know how important these protective tariffs are to us. Why, without the tariffs, we'd be paupers.
I remember that night. Father gave one of his lectures.
That's right. And the very next day, he set out to prove to me how important the tariffs were to his textile business and American industry.
Here are all the textiles that we produce. Here, feel this. Every bit as good as what the English make.
Mother says that Grandfather started the mill during the War of 1812 when we fought the British.
Quite right. You see, there was an embargo. No British goods could be bought legally, so American industries such as my father's mill sprang up to supply the embargoed goods. Here, look here. There's where our mill got its start. Back then, we could only produce 2 types of cloth. My father only employed 10 families at the time. Times certainly have changed, haven't they?
Well, yes, Uncle, I suppose they have.
Well, I suspect you're ready for lunch after my dragging you around the mill all day. But first, let me show you my office. Abigail, my dear.
I know I'm early, but my charity work at the church was finished earlier than I expected, so I thought I'd join you for lunch.
Now that you know how my business works, you can understand why I favor the protective tariff.
The tariffs have helped your textile business. But, Uncle, please try to see this from a Southerner's eyes. The tariffs have not helped my family's plantation. People are leaving their land because they can't afford to farm anymore.
Is this true? The newspapers have said...
You've been reading the northern newspapers, Miss Abigail. Naturally, they're not going to support the Southern point of view. That the tariff is just not fair. How can I explain? With your permission, sir, we in the South trade mostly with England and France, more so than with the North. Now, imagine that you are England and I am the South. This is the cotton I have for sale, and these are the goods you will sell to us. Cotton goods, woolen cloth, dishes. We sold England our cotton in great quantity. And England sold to us goods that we use daily. So trade between England and the South flourished. But after the protective tariff, the price of many of the goods that England used to sell to us was very high. We could not afford to buy very much.
I think I understand. The English sell fewer goods to America, so they have less to spend on your cotton.
Exactly. And the South pays more for what we can buy. So you see, our whole economy is threatened by these tariffs.
Mr. Guest, Miss Abigail, oh, I do hope I'm not interrupting anything.
Mr. Evans, a pleasure, sir. Meet my nephew from South Carolina, Harry Hampton.
How do you do, sir?
How do you do?
I was just explaining to Harry about the importance of the protective tariffs. You remember what it was like for American industry before we had them?
Oh, I certainly do. A lot of people, including your father, had a hard time of it.
Yes, indeed. After the war, the British competition was back. Things were going badly at the mill. We couldn't compete with those British prices.
The British textiles were cheaper. I told Mr. Gist and his father that we couldn't continue to buy his goods from my shop. But you know, after the war, the people were feeling patriotic. They wanted the United States to be economically independent of Britain. And so in 1816, the first tariffs were imposed to protect American industry. And they were supported by the North and the South.
And without those tariffs, the mill would probably have gone out of business. But instead, look what happened. We built a new mill, more than double the size of the old one, and 50 families earn an income working in that mill. That is progress.
Now, to be fair, of course, Mr. Gist, I must add that there is another side to the story. Most people are worse off as a result of the tariffs. The more recent tariffs are much higher than those of 1816. Now, my customers, for example, pay higher prices for American-made clothing, and so they buy less clothing, and they have less money to buy other things.
What would become of this country if We continue to depend upon England for our manufactured goods.
I understand. American manufacturers are making and selling more cloth. But because of the tariffs, we in the South are paying more for cloth than we've ever paid before. And we can't sell our cotton to our customers in Europe. Our great statesman, John Calhoun, says that the protective tariff is an immense tax put onto one portion of the community to put money into the pockets of another. In short, sirs, most industry is in the North, and the benefit of the tariff is for them, not for the South. We have higher prices and nothing to show for it.
Father, perhaps Harry and I could go on ahead to lunch while you and Mr. Evans talk business. We've had enough talk about taxes for one day, and he does start college tomorrow.
As you wish, my dear. We will be long.
After you started going to college, we didn't see as much of you as we would have liked.
I wanted to do well, prove that after I graduated, I'd be worthy of taking over my family's plantation. Mother wrote that things were fine at home, but when my brother Will wrote me about the goings-on in Charleston...
I remember. It was the first time you confided in me. What are you reading that can make you look so unhappy?
It's from my brother, Will. Your father thinks the tariffs benefit everyone. But things are so desperate in the South that people are coming to blows. Who knows where it will all end?
What are you talking about?
My brother Will was in a fight. Trouble has been brewing for weeks over the nullification issue. The nullifiers want to get rid of the tariffs by having our state government ignore the federal law. But the Unionists believe the nullifiers are threatening the nation. When Will rode into Charleston 2 weeks ago, he ran smack into a brawl between the nullifiers and the Unionists. The government used the protective tariff to change what we buy, and look how far it has pushed us.
But Harry, if every state could choose what laws to obey, wouldn't the nation fall apart?
The nullifiers don't want to secede. They don't want to withdraw from the Union. But people are worried about the future, Abby.
Harry, amazing news. Your mother will be here in a fortnight.
I cannot believe that my brother supports a tariff that could have such a dire influence on our lives.
Let's not dwell on our disagreements, Louisa.
Yes. Instead, let's try to imagine ways that the government might use taxes to encourage activities that all of us would agree are desirable. Well, for example, I'd simply like to imagine that there might one day be tax laws that would encourage people to give more to charities.
Are you suggesting that the government might tax income and permit some people to pay less taxes because they contribute to charity?
Why not?
What?
Mother, imagine what it would be like if the government gave an exemption or a deduction on some taxes to encourage people to spend money to send their children to college.
Amusing nonsense.
Harry! Harry, there's gonna be a war!
What?
President Jackson is treating the nullifiers as traitors.
What does it say, Harry?
President Jackson says, the power to annul a law of the United States assumed by one state is incompatible with the existence of the Union. He says disunion by armed force is treason.
He's saying the nullifier's as good as want to secede from the Union.
On your unhappy state will fall all the evils of the conflict you force upon the government of your country.
He is talking about South Carolina.
We must go home.
No.
Louisa, I understand your concern, but President Jackson is not going to start a war. And Harry, do not rashly make a decision that can have such an effect upon your life. Stay with us. Now you see what your nullifiers have done. No telling where this will end.
And what about your precious tariff? Just look where it's gotten us. I have enough difficulty running the plantation without these additional tariffs.
Remember what his father wanted?
This is a decision
I'm going at it all day.
Yourself.
You are going to stay, aren't you, Harry? Aren't you?
Harry? Son, your uncle has kindly offered to keep you in school. And as you know, your father dearly wanted you to have a gentleman's education. I have your brother with me at home, so it's up to you. Will you go or stay?
I should be with my family.
No.
We don't know whether or not President Jackson will send troops. I belong at home. I'll miss you, Abby. So I returned home because of taxes. I now understand that governments can use taxes to influence what people do. They affect what people buy and don't buy, what they produce, and even what they sell. Maybe someday taxes will even be used to encourage such things as giving to charity. But for now, I must stay here on the plantation. I never thought taxes could affect people's lives in so many ways. Goodbye, Abby. Please accept these regards from your faithful cousin, Harry.
Longing I wait for thee, comfort me, dear.